So, hello everybody. Can you hear me? Are we okay? Thank you so much for all your love and prayers over the past months. It's been a long journey and will continue to be a long journey. Um, we're continuing our series about re, and I especially asked if I could do the recovery one, um, partly because um, I am actually in a period of recovery uh, from my own injuries when I fell and fractured my arm and hurt my leg, and from the trauma that has come upon us as a family. And so I've very much been looking at scripture and wanting to understand just how it is that Jesus wants us to be, either if we're the one who's recovering or if we're those around supporting someone who's recovering. So sorry, Matt, it's not a very exciting journey through the Gospels, but it is a journey at a mother's pace, not a son's pace. So on Friday, I had a lovely week last week away in Devon at my sister's wedding and to see my dad, and then to have a few days with John and Em. And we fortunately were able to meet on the beach with social distancing with Matt and Laura as well. So it was great, but the journey back wasn't great. The journey back was very unpleasant with heavy rain and heavy traffic. So you might imagine when I got home, I parked the car, I carried my handbag and not much else into the house. And I thought, oh my goodness, I need something to revive me, to recover from this journey. So I go into the kitchen, and what do I do in true English culture fashion? I put the kettle on for a cup of tea. First aid to recovery. And I made my cup of tea and got the milk from the fridge and put it in the cup of tea. Oh my goodness, the milk was off. My heart was so upset. I was so upset because I desperately wanted that cup of tea to aid my recovery. And I didn't get it until I went out to a shop later. So I had a drink of water instead. But recovery is all about how we become well again following something that has happened to us or something that we've been involved in. It's all about how we go about finding our strength again, or how we find something we've lost, we recover something that we feel we've lost, maybe a talent. Viv in lockdown was learning a new piece of music to share with her grandson. And there may be some people who feel they're actually in the process of recovering a talent they've lost in the busyness that there was before lockdown. It's also about being able to come to terms with things and to move on after we have been badly damaged or we've experienced a very deep trauma. All those things are recovery. That it's not necessarily meaning that everything will be restored to how it was before. Sometimes we put that feeling on a word, don't we? Oh, I'm recovered. I'm just like I was before. And the reality is, actually, some things happen in our lives which cause our lives to change. And we are no longer who we were before the events happened in our life. But that's not to say that's a negative thing. It isn't. It isn't. It's we can recover, we can become strong, but we can also accept there is change in our life. What I've been doing is having a look and dwelling on how Jesus was with people who actually needed to recover. People around him that he met, his friends who were close to him, himself. I've been having a look in scripture, and the first one I want to look at is in Mark. And it's in Mark 5:21. Sorry, folks. I thought it was in Mark 5:21. Oh, it is. Okay, sorry. I'm not going to read it all. I'm reading the first couple of verses and then I'm going on. There's an interruption in the story. Jesus had to deal with lots of interruptions and recover from them. This is about Jairus' daughter. When Jesus went back across to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. A leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, came and fell down before him, pleading with him to deal with his little daughter. Please come and place your hands on her, heal her so she can live. And Jesus went with him. And then we know that the lady with the issue of blood came and touched his garment and was healed. And he stops and realizes what's happened, and he has an interaction with the lady with the issue of blood. And he concludes it by saying, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace, you have been healed." While he was speaking, this is verse 35, while he was still speaking to her, messages arrived from Jairus' home. "Your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now." But Jesus ignored their comments and said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid, just trust me." Then Jesus stopped the crowd and wouldn't let anyone go with him except Peter and James and John. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw the commotion and the weeping and the wailing. He went inside and spoke to the people. "Why all this weeping and commotion?" he asked. "The child isn't dead, she's only asleep." The crowd laughed at him, but he told them all to go outside. Then he took the girl's father and mother and his 3 disciples into the room where the girl was lying. Holding her hand, he said to her, "Get up, little girl." And the girl, who was 12 years old, immediately stood up and walked around. Her parents were absolutely overwhelmed. Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone what had happened, and he told them to give her something to eat. So an incredible event for that family. Their daughter has been so ill and has eventually died. And Jesus has come, and Jesus has miraculously brought her back to life. But I think it's absolutely wonderful that that has happened. But there is so much we can learn from it about when we experience crisis or difficulty in our life. So what does Jesus do? Jesus sends away the crowds. He sends away the crowds. He says to Jairus and his wife and his 2 disciples, "We're going to be with this little girl." He causes there to be a privacy, a stepping aside. And folks, there are times when things are happening, when the kindest thing you can do for other people is to give them their privacy, to give them their space. Jesus is modeling to us what is a good way to be. He's modeling a good way to be with people. There are still people there. There are the disciples, there are the parents. They have formed a small group around this young girl. And also then, Jesus says to the parents, "Hey, come on. She needs something to eat. She needs something to eat. So he's bringing the parents into the situation where they're like, they must be totally flabbergasted. Here was their daughter dead, and here she is alive again. And he's saying, hey, she needs something to eat. He's bringing the practical routine of life back into the situation. Now, I've been with John and Emma this week. I'm in a bubble with them because I'm on my own. And I can tell you, Isaac is a year older than Jairus' daughter, but young teenagers are forever hungry. They are forever hungry. And what Jairus' daughter needed at that time was food and sustenance and drink. And you know, often when something happens in our life that is traumatic or is very difficult to handle, or when we end up in situations where we run off our feet and we don't know what to do and we don't know which way to look, we're so busy, we don't know where we're going, we neglect to care for ourselves. We neglect to have regular meals. We neglect to take care of the fact that we need rest and sleep and drink. And here is Jesus. I just love it so much. He is so practical. It just excites me. I get so excited when he models things to us, how to be with people. Here is Jesus saying, hey, absolutely incredible. I'm telling you, parents, don't go around telling a lot of people about this. Give her space, give yourself the space, give them the privacy, but also, how about some food? She's in need of looking after. Folks, when you get in situations that are really difficult, then you need a nice cup of tea, or whatever the equivalent for you is of a nice cup of tea. Maybe a coffee, maybe a glass of wine, maybe a good meal. And we neglect these things to our peril. We neglect them to our peril. We end up at the end of the day in a sorry state because we haven't taken the time to drink or to eat. I want to move on now to look at, in the next chapter, okay, at Jesus's reactions and treatment of his disciples, okay? So he's been, in this part, he's been with the disciples for a bit. He's been teaching them things. He's modeled to them. He's been healing people. He's just raised Jairus' daughter from the dead. He's healed the lady with the issue of blood. And now he says to them, in verse 4 of chapter 6, in Mark's Gospel, then Jesus told them, beg your pardon, wrong verse. It is verse 6. Then Jesus went out from village to village teaching, and he called his 12 disciples together and sent them out 2 by 2 with authority to cast out evil spirits. He told them to take nothing with them except a walking stick, no food, no traveler's bag, no money. He told them to wear sandals, but not to take even an extra coat. When you enter each village, be a guest in only one home, he said, and if a village won't welcome you or listen, leave it. It's a sign that you have abandoned that village to its fate. So the village disciples went out, telling all they met to turn from their sin. And they cast out many demons and healed many sick people, anointing them with olive oil. And then if we turn over towards the middle of the chapter, verse 30, okay, it says, the apostles returned to Jesus from their ministry tour and told him all they had done. and what they had taught. Then Jesus said to them, "Let's get away from the clouds for a while and rest." There were so many people coming and going that Jesus and his disciples didn't have any time to eat. They left by boat for a quieter spot. So, sometimes we aren't recovering from crisis or difficulty. Sometimes we need to recover from the fact we have just been doing something that has taxed us to our limits. And here are these disciples coming back from teaching, from healing. Remember that we are talking about men who are not trained as rabbis, who are not skilled. They're in totally new territory, and they've gone out into these villages and they have taught as Jesus teaches. They have healed, they have cast out demons, and they're coming back to Jesus so excited, so excited. And what does Jesus want for them? What does Jesus want for them? He wants for them to rest. He wants for them to rest. And I guess a challenge for myself, and I'm sure for lots of us, is when we have done something that has been very busy, that has taken a lot out of us, however excited that might be, we need to rest, because that is what Jesus spoke to his disciples about. They've come and they've been with him, and he said, we need to rest. We need to rest. We need to be still and restore and recover some of the energy we have lost. Not yesterday, but the Saturday before, I was very privileged and excited to be at my sister's wedding. She and her partner had been together for 20 years, and they got married on the Saturday, and it was wonderful. Although we were a very small group, 13, it was wonderful to be with her. And the next morning, we were all staying in this particular hotel in the middle of Devon. It was absolutely lovely with rabbits and squirrels everywhere. But we all sat at breakfast and said, oh my goodness, we are so tired. We needed to recover. So we sat chatting over coffee and eating cooked breakfast, which was very lovely. You need to rest. You need to factor that in for yourself. And if you're with others and you know they're busy, you need to factor in how you are going to persuade them to rest, because it's not easy sometimes persuading people who are on a high, who are very busy and have lots of phone calls and things. Rest. So we have privacy, we have practicality in looking after our bodies, we have peace and rest. And I want to look now, not in Mark's Gospel, but in John's Gospel. Okay, so I'm going to John chapter 19. And these are just two little verses, but they are two very important verses. Okay, here we are. Jesus is on the cross and he has been crucified and he's still alive, and the soldiers are tossing dice for his clothes. Very traumatic scene. And who is there? His mother. His mother. There is a saying, isn't there, in England, that no parent should witness the death of a child. It's considered very tragic. And here is Mary, seeing her son suffer, on the cross, seeing him being scorned and laughed at, bleeding in agony. And here is Jesus on the cross, in his agony and in his pain, in all that he must be experiencing, because at that point, God is not there. He feels he's far away. He is there, but he feels he's far away. But here he is. And what does he do? We read in verse 25 of chapter 19, standing near the cross were Jesus' mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother standing there beside the disciple he loved, he said to her, "Woman, he is your son." And he said to this disciple, "She is your mother." And from then on, this disciple took her into his home. I'm in awe. I'm in awe of what Jesus did. I'm in awe of the fact that in his own pain, he actually was aware of someone whose heart was breaking, who was going through probably the most extreme trauma you could. And what he does teaches us so much about what we need for recovery sometimes when something very traumatic happens. He says to John the disciple, "John, this is your mother." Almost, I'm giving into your hands her care. I'm giving into your hands her life, that you would care for her and look after her, that you would shelter her. I'm giving into your hands my mother. And you know, folks, there are sometimes events in our life that are so traumatic, we actually need those alongside us who can be Jesus to us. Oh, we need Jesus so much at those times. And he comes and he stands with us. And he is there for us. And there's that famous poem, I think you would call it Footprints, where it is that God carries us. But you know what? Jesus models here the fact that we can help carry others as well. And we, if we are the one experiencing trauma, can be carried. And I have to say, it's been a very humbling experience. Very humbling to experience my two sons and their families carry me. It has not been easy to accept. I'm a very independent lady, but I have needed them to carry me. And what I want to encourage you about is, if you are very close to someone who is going through a trauma that is breaking them, are you the one to offer not necessarily a physical home, but an emotional home to support them, to care for them as they recover from what is happening to them? And if that is happening for you, that you are experiencing a trauma that is just so big, you don't know what to do, are you prepared to humble yourself and reach out to those around you who are offering to help shelter you and carry you? I have been blessed and challenged and humbled because I have people who have been Jesus to me, as well as having Jesus support me and carry me, especially in the night. Especially in the night. And in the day, there have times when I just have to ring and say, please come and make my lunch and help me get to bed with a hot water bottle. Nothing wrong with it, folks. Where do you fit in the scheme for people, or where can you be prepared to fit with people? The last thing that I want to talk about, I hope, am I doing all right, Kath? I'm not too long, am I? Is the reality that some things that come into our life, we don't recover by becoming back to our normal self. We actually change. We actually change. We have to embrace change. This happens in many ways. And Laura was speaking to me the one day. I was saying to her that I felt like a broken mug, a mug you drink from. And I felt like I was in pieces. And she was saying that there's a very famous method in Japan of repairing broken crockery called kintsugi. And it's how the Japanese use molten gold to glue pieces back together. So they sort of do the jigsaw of the different broken pieces, and they use gold to form to stick bits back together, so that you then have the whole, but you have very clearly showing the cracks. They become the strongest part of the bowl or the mug or whatever. And folks, that's how it's going to be in recovery. Sometimes we get back to normal. Sometimes it means we have lost a job. Sometimes it means we have lost a partner. Sometimes it means we bear scars. And that is okay. That is okay if we are prepared to engage with Jesus and with those around us in the process of recovering and allowing the pieces to come back together, which takes time. If we look at the events with Jesus after he came back to life, after the resurrection, when he met the disciples, it's noticeable how often in those stories he actually showed them his hands and his feet. He showed them the scars. He showed them the way that his body was now changed. He was changed. And actually, they told his story. And I want to comfort and I want to reassure you that if in your recovery from things that have happened to you, you are changed, you are different, you're still progressing with that recovery and still have cracks, it's okay. That's how it should be. You will not be the same. When Andy and I get to the other side of what we're experiencing at the moment, we will not be the same. My heart is that we will have gold filling in the cracks, causing us to be usable again, but forever looking different. I'm not sure where your recovery is at the moment. I'm not sure who alongside you needs help to recover. What I am sure of is that all of us are created in the image of God, and Jesus has put within us some of the things that I've talked about. So it may be that you have the ability to keep people fed and nurtured. When I fractured my arm and Andy was so ill, we had meals brought to us on a rota. What a blessing. What a blessing. It may be that you have the capacity and the room to offer protection and privacy and peace. How nice it is. How nice it was for me to go to Viv's when I could, after, I don't know which stage in the lockdown thing, but anyway, there was a stage where I could go to her house and have a cup of tea. Just be private, just be there, say what I wanted to say on my mind, even if it was not very polite. But I could be. I had privacy, I had protection. And as I said, there will be some instances where you will be able to offer to someone that protection that they need. Just like my sons, John and Matt, and the families have done for me over these past months. Don't be scared. Know that you will recover. Know that you may look different. You may act different. It will be okay. And most of all, give yourself time. Time. If you look at Psalm 23, very famous psalm, all of what I've been saying is included in that. The Lord is my shepherd. I have everything I need. He leads me to rest in green meadows. He leads me by peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along the right paths, bringing honor to his name. Even when I walk through the dark valley of death, I will not be afraid, for you're close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You welcome me as a guest, anointing my head with oil. My cup overflows with blessings. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever. And here's a challenge, folks. Here's a challenge. If you want to see an instant in the early church where this was worked out, this whole sense of recovery, it was worked out, read the story of Paul's conversion and his early time after. It has it all. It has it all. It has the trauma of blindness and not knowing what has happened to him, of hearing the voice of God. It has the arrival of Ananias, who brings healing. And what did Paul do after that? He rested and he ate, and then he mixed and stayed privately with the Christians where he was. It's fascinating. Have a read of it. It just is something that is exciting to read. Thank you, Kath. Is that okay to finish now?
Thank you, Sandy. That's perfect. I'm just going to end the recording and then we'll carry on.